r/ask Reddit. What's the strangest date you've ever been on? It's 2001, so VHS and chill at this girl's dorm room. My first time over there, and there is this giant bear on the bed. Like, got the softball in the milk jug as the carnival first tri-tier bear. It occupies 50% of the surface area. I say whoa, how'd you score that bear? Huh? I don't know. Me. What? Huh? I don't know. A few minutes go by. Me. You don't know? Huh? Yeah, me. Okay, look, it's okay if it's from an ex. I don't care if you stole it. I'll believe almost anything you tell me at this point. But there is no way in hell you're going to tell me you don't know where that giant bear is from. I had a stuffed dinosaur 1/4 that size that I got when I was 6 and I could tell you every detail about how I got it. Huh? Well, good for you. But I don't know how I got it. Are you going to be able to let this go? Me. Looks at bear. Bear stares back. Eyes full of secrets. I don't think I can. Walk out. Well, this one time I took my date to dinner at what seemed to be a front for some type of illicit activity. We had just moved to a new area, and we wanted to check out the local shops and restaurants. While we were wandering, we stumbled into a tiny Italian place. Back home, the small hole-in-the-wall restaurants always have the best food, so we were excited to give it a shot. Big curtains were covering the entry windows, so we had no idea what was inside until we trudged through the door. Inside, we were met with emptiness and silence. We both immediately thought the store was closed, and I spun around and searched for the store hours posted somewhere on the door. While I was looking, we heard a heavy thud as a young woman barked, "I'll be right with you." She appeared, greeted us confusingly, and asked us what she could do for us, which, looking back, is probably a red flag. But we were naive and hungry, so we said we were there for dinner. She looked puzzled, but motioned us to follow her to a booth right by the entrance. She then disappeared into the back, and we heard a muffled conversation between our hostess and a man. The consensus was basically they were not prepared for us, or didn't know how to proceed. I asked my date if she wanted to split, but she insisted we stay for the story. The square-shaped balding man burst through the kitchen door with 2 glasses of water for us, and in a very loud and deep voice he explained that it was his birthday, and we would eat what he felt like making us. We wholeheartedly agreed. We waited around 30 minutes, and he again returned with 3 large bowls of spaghetti and meat sauce. He placed 2 bowls in front of us, and 1 next to me for himself. He sat with us and ate. We had light and awkward conversation with him during, and he kept asking us jokingly if we were cops or with the health board. He was incredibly nervous about us, so my date kept cracking corny puns or awful jokes because he would forcibly laugh at anything designed with humor. We talked about our lives, the cities we've lived in, our pets. He had a teacup chihuahua named Princess, and his wife. He decided we were good people, and didn't change us for the meal. We wished him a happy birthday. He hugged us, and we went on our way. Easily the best spaghetti I've ever had in my life. The restaurant, unfortunately, no longer exists. That's amazing, and a little scary. Got to tell you. By your description I was imagining the Italian restaurant scene from the Goonies. I wouldn't have stuck around, but like your date said, you did get a cool story out of it. I had a similar situation once when I was looking for speakers for my car. I went into this hole-in-the-wall shop on the main drag in my town. It purported to be a stereo shop. I'd never been in there before, and there was very little stock. I was going in after work, so I was in slacks, business shoes, and a button-up shirt and tie and sunglasses. As my eyes adjust to the inside light, the guy at the counter starts nervously whispering to somebody in the back. I walk up and ask him about 6x9 speakers. He seems cagey, doesn't really seem to know what I'm talking about, seems to be feeling me out, nods a lot with a fake grin and suggests I try someplace else because they don't carry that. 6x9 being about the most common stereo speaker size. It's really odd that they don't carry them. The shop wasn't there very long. I get the feeling it was a front for drug sales. Matched on Tinder with a guy who decided that a great story to tell in detail on our date was about the time he fisted a lady and tore her up so bad inside that she was bleeding profusely and had to go to the hospital to get stitches. After he was done telling the story, he told me he was glad I told him I was super squeamish, because now he wouldn't try to show me pictures of all the blood he had saved on his phone. He also said he had been on well over 100 Tinder dates, and I had managed to land in his top 10. I never talked to him again. Had a good friend in uni who disappeared overseas for a year after we graduated. I stayed there to study and teach, and one day I got a text from a number I didn't recognize saying, "Hey, it's Joe from business school. Want to catch up for a coffee?" Hadn't seen him in ages, so I said yes very enthusiastically. I walked into the coffee shop at the right time, look around for Joe, and there's Joe from business school. A different Joe from business school. I couldn't walk out because he'd already seen me, so we chatted politely for an hour and we've never talked since. I've been different Joe before. Made plans to visit a friend on Long Island. Took me about 2 hours to get there. I show up and could tell she was thrown off by something but shrugged it off. A couple of hours later she confesses she actually thought she made plans with a different Joe. Luckily, we laughed about it and ended up having a good time. I was a waitress and I had a table of 2 guys. One was very cute and flirting with me and we exchanged numbers. He asked me out and I said yes. I didn't really go out much and he didn't tell me where we were going out, what we were doing. Me being young and dumb at the time thought that would be exciting. So he drives me a pretty good way from my house and we go to an elementary school. I was really confused. Apparently he was a basketball coach and they had a game that night. So at this point I notice I have no reception on my phone and I really wanted to leave, but I thought maybe we were going somewhere fun afterwards, so I gave up trying to call someone to rescue me. I sat and watched this game right next to this dude's mom. Yeah, this was going well. Finally the game ended and we go to get in the car and his friend from the restaurant gets in the front seat making me sit in the back. I am super uncomfortable with this and I ask what's going on. They basically tell me they want to run a train on me. Nope. Duck that. Take me home now. I got lucky. They moped and took me home. I was terrified. That was horrible. Hey, if you want to run a train on a girl, let her have the front seat. It's only polite. Met a girl online, talked it up, and while she seemed a bit immature, thought heck, why not? She casually mentioned she really liked pigs. What she meant to say was she was obsessed with pigs. Obsessed. Go to one of the best restaurants in the area for a first date. Bad idea. Sometimes pictures are from someone 10 years prior, or the person hides things, etc. But that wasn't the problem. She looked just like her pictures, but I didn't even have to have seen her first, because everything else gave it away. She came in a giant t-shirt that had a sparkly pink pig on it. Earrings? Pig earrings. Bracelets? Yep. Pig bracelets. I swear her dad might have been Homer Simpson. She had this headband on with a little pig on it. Her shoes? Yep. Pigs on the front of the toes. But best of all, she had a giant, or at least it seemed giant, pink purse with the face of a pig on it. You could not stop seeing it once you did. And I'm sure everyone else in this nicer / classier restaurant saw it too. I felt overdressed with her but underdressed with every other couple there. It was beyond embarrassing. For some reason which I have to convince myself was politeness, not stupidity. We still had dinner, but Reddit, it was the fastest damn dinner I've ever had at a sit down place. I practically blurted out something about how, "Oh, you really do like pigs," which she started giggling, oinking, and going on about how everything she has is pig themed. Then she wouldn't stop, and it became the dominant part of the conversation. There were a dozen other things that made it a train wreck, but these were the clinchers to a solid 0/5 date. I remember afterwards consoling with a friend of a friend, because I had to tell someone, and then I promptly buried this as my worst date. Too long didn't read. Girl was obsessed with pigs but ironically no porking at end. Internet date. At a bar. First time meeting the guy. He tells me over a bowl of eggplant chips that he's so good in bed that the last woman he boned spontaneously lactated from the mind-blowing pleasure of it all. I've posted this before because it's so weird. I went for a meal with this girl I met through a dating app and it was going really well. We started talking about movies and then we decided to go to the cinema to go watch Inception. She said there was a cinema nearby but I didn't know the area at all. So I used the GPS on my phone and she held it and directed me. Once we got there we started walking inside and I realized I didn't have my phone in my pocket. I said I must have left it in the car and started to walk back to get it. She was trying to get me to leave it and saying we would miss the film, but the phone was only about a week old, so I was really paranoid about it. We checked the car for about 10 minutes but we couldn't find it. I asked her to check her jacket and her bag but she said it wasn't there. A couple parked next to us, so I asked them to ring my number because I couldn't find it. It started to ring and it was obviously coming from my date's handbag. She took it out and said she must have missed it. I thanked the couple and locked my car, and as I turned back around she was walking the other way. I ran to catch up and asked what was going on, but she was very dismissive and was barely talking. That's when I realized it wasn't an accident and just left her to walk home alone. I have a strong suspicion she's A, done this before, and B, would have excused herself during the movie and bolted then. Highest probability of a clean escape. Always check your pockets, kids. I went on a date with a guy in my apartment block, only to see his disappointed face when my girlfriend called me on the way home. I realized he'd assumed I was gay and that I'd assumed he was just a friendly guy wanted to hang out. This is my favorite in this thread. Everyone is so innocent in making it weird. This story isn't as strange as some, but it's my strangest. A guy I'd met a few times contacted me, asked me on a date. I had never been asked on a date before and accepted despite thinking him a little strange and having heard some odd things about his family. He picked me up and everything seemed good. We decided to grab a pizza and eat it in a park. When we went to purchase the pizza, it turned out he worked there and had all his co-workers come out to gawk at me. This guy wasn't very popular with the ladies and seemed to be proving he had a date. I'm bad in social situations and got super uncomfortable, but didn't know how to bail, and we went to the park. It was very awkward and I wanted to go home by the end of it. We mostly just sat in awkward silence and tried not to hear each other chewing. I thought I was going home, but he decided he wanted to stop at his house. I agree because I honestly did not know how to disagree. First dating experience. His home turned out to be with his parents. We were both 18-20. This wouldn't have been so bad had they not all 10 of his siblings. I don't remember exactly how many siblings he had, and his parents were home and wanted to meet me. They were just a big, nice family. They were very religious and looked like they belonged to a cult. They all had long hair, homemade clothing. They were homeschooled. The mom said hello. Then the dad came in and nobody was allowed to say a word while he questioned me on what me and his son had done on our date and when the family would be seeing me again. It was terrifying. My date showed me his pet turtles, which were really cute, and finally drove me home. He tried to kiss me after making it clear he thought we were in a relationship after one date. At this point I almost ran from the car. I messaged him later on explaining that I was only looking for friends at this point in time. Too long, didn't read. First date I'd ever been on. Ended up being paraded before the staff at a pizza place and meeting my date's very religious family. He thought we were dating by the end of the failed date. Feeling pity on this one. Like, he's so socially inept because of his kooky family sheltering him that he couldn't understand the date was a disaster and he wasn't with you. But he wasn't bad enough to go off the deep end and profess his undying love for you like some of the guys you read about on here. So, there's hope for him. Hope he made it. I met a guy from OkCupid. The first time we met up in a public place and just had a casual chat. It wasn't a horrible date, but it wasn't very memorable either. I decided to give him another try because it could have just been nerves. The second date he invited me over to his place. I knew he lived with his parents, but I kind of assumed they'd be away. They weren't away. They kept coming into the lunch room and giving us iced tea and chips whilst he played Xbox in his track pants. No shirt, and I sat there awkwardly watching. He didn't really speak much to me. It was 11 PM. And he was in his 30s. TLDR. His mum and dad brought us drinks and snacks while I watched him play games without him really speaking to me. He was 34. My freshman year in college I had a crush on a girl from my high school. When I asked her out, she informed me that she only dated women. I am male. She insisted that we were still friends. She just didn't roll that way. She offered to be my wingman and I gladly took her up on the offer. A few weeks later she had set me up on a semi-blind date with one of her friends. We'll call her Monica. The three of us met at Arby's because we were fancy, and my friend tried playing matchmaker. Pimp Ninja Man loves theater and so do you. Monica loves music and so do you. Pimp Ninja Man. The date was going fine, so my friend decided to leave Monica and I alone. We talked a bit more and decided to go see a movie. I didn't have a car at the time, so I hopped in Monica's passenger seat and we went on our way. That's when shit got weird. About 2 minutes after leaving Arby's, Monica receives a phone call. She says it's her roommate and she needs to answer it. She picks up the phone and I hear a man's voice. I was a bit surprised, but it's not too unusual for a girl to have a guy for a roommate. Monica and her roommate get into some kind of argument, and she pulls over to a gas station. Another car pulls in right beside us. Again, I didn't think anything of it at the time. Monica turns to me and says I need to go talk to my roommate. Just wait here for a minute. I assume she just wants to be on the phone in private. But what happens next will shock you. Monica gets out of the car and goes to talk to the driver of the car that pulled in next to us. This is where I start to freak out. What are the odds that her roommate happened to pull up right beside us? I hear a bit of yelling and then I start thinking about an escape plan. At this point, Monica opens my car door and says, "Hey, I'm really sorry to do this, but my roommate is going to have to take you home." Now, this is the part of the movie where someone in the audience screams, "Don't you go with him." Now, that's how you get killed. White people always going with the strange man thinking everything will just be a-okay. I wish I could say I got smart, said, "No thank you, I'll just walk," and went home. But I didn't. With some combination of confusion and curiosity, I get out of Monica's car and head into the passenger seat of this stranger. We're in my hometown, so I know if he goes any direction he's not supposed to, I can just bail out of the car and run to freedom. The guy was pretty big. I was 6 feet 2 inches at the time and he was significantly bigger than me, if that tells you anything. I don't remember his name, but we'll just call him Ross. Anyway, Ross starts driving back to my dorm and we're sitting in awkward silence for most of the trip. Eventually, he says, "So how do you know Monica?" I knew something fishy was happening, so I wasn't about to say we were on a date. I just say, "Oh, we have a mutual friend," and hope Ross doesn't get suspicious. He just nodded his head and kept driving. Apparently Ross was resolving some anger in his head, because out of nowhere he starts talking as if we were in the middle of a much more personal conversation. Yeah, a lot of people at our church are upset that Monica and I live together. I think they're just assuming we're having sex all the time or something. It shouldn't even matter since we're engaged, but it's still annoying to hear stuff like that. You know? I just nod my head as I realize what just happened. Apparently my lesbian friend set me up on a blind date with an engaged girl, and her fiance came and picked me up to take me home. I was silent the rest of the night. I told Ross the wrong dorm so he wouldn't know where I lived, and I got out of the car and just walked around campus for a bit. It was definitely the strangest date I've ever been on. Maybe they were on a break and Ross hadn't got the message. I started talking to a girl I came across on a dating site. We made plans to meet about 1 week after we began talking. I ended up cancelling the plans a few hours before we were supposed to meet, as I had something come up. Told her I was available the following day as we do not live in the same city. A few hours later she responded, asked me if I wanted to take a road trip to another city a few hours west from where I'm located. She just wanted a co-pilot to keep her company. I agreed, although partially because I felt bad for changing plans at last minute the previous day. I was skeptical. I've never just taken a random road trip with some girl that I haven't met before. She picks me up in the morning. Not too awkward at first. Easy conversation for the most part. Within 10 minutes of being on the road she needs to piss, but can't wait for next gas station. She abruptly pulls over on side of highway and does her business. Okay, I'm thinking whatever, you gotta go. You gotta go. Right. The place we were traveling to is about 200 kilometers from where I lived. Let's just say we had to make another 5 stops. 2 more on highway and 3 gas stations before we arrived at our destination. Yes, I started to count after the 3rd stop. Anyways, I'm definitely thinking this girl has some kind of STD or issues. That's a lot of piss breaks in such a short amount of time. Okay, So I was told she needed to pick a few things up in city. So it wasn't just things, it was her 74-year-old grandmother, whom I would shortly be meeting for lunch, along with a few other members of her family. I said to her, WTF, you're kidding right? Well, she wasn't. Well, FFS. At this point I did not have much of a choice considering she is my ride back home. Long story short, it was awkward as duck. Her aunt, a cousin and some family friend with her grandma. It was like a frickin' family reunion. I felt like I was in some kind of dark comedy show. And I had to improvise bullshit. Anyways, made it back home after 4 more pee breaks. And having to pretend lie to her grandmother about actually knowing anything about this girl. I didn't talk to her again. How is that for awkward? Matched on Tinder with a theater girl who was into cosplay and claimed to be a lesbian and wanted to try it on. We met at a cafe. She said she had a girlfriend doing the same thing. Luckiest man alive, I'm thinking, right? We hit it off at local cafe. I take her to get Thai food. We go back to my place. We bang. In the middle of the mind-blowing sex I realize that there is no ducking way in hell she could have these skills and still, technically speaking, be a virgin. Of course I still finished and then brought it up. I said, first time, my ass, she said. Nope, but it sure got you fired up, I shrugged, then gave her a high five. We went at it all night. Got completely blindsided and it was awesome. We are currently friends with benefits and she actually does have a girlfriend. They are both bi and like to duck guys in different scenarios. Not even mad. Never been with a girl who was legitimately pansexual. She ducks everything. I wore a condom. When I was in HS, a college guy asked me out. We both didn't know what to do after dinner, so we drove around the neighborhood in his uncle's sports car just talking. Then the cops pulled us over because there were 3 calls of a car just driving around and around. This one isn't bad at all, just sounds like you live in a super uptight neighborhood. Once I talked to a girl on Tinder that I hit it off with pretty well, and we made plans to meet up later in the weekend. We'll call her Sarah. The next day though, another girl that I talked to, that we'll call Sophie, told me she'd be out at a bar close to me. She told me to come join her and bring a friend. So I brought my roomie and went to meet Sophie. As we got to the bar, I spotted Sophie sitting there with another girl whose back was turned to me. Went up, gave Sophie a quick hug as I sat down next to me, and motioned for my buddy to sit on the other side with the other girl. It was only then I actually looked at Sophie's friend. First noticing the intense stare I received from over the table, I realized the girl was Sarah, the girl I had made plans to meet up with the following day. I could see she was equally taken aback as me, and for what felt like an eternity we sat there with the biggest deer in the headlights look before the silence was broken by Sophie, saying, "Hey Sebus, this is my bestie. Her name's Sarah," which led to us nervously shaking hands, exchanging names, not knowing what else to do. Already having shook hands as strangers, neither of us really knew how to proceed, not wanting to mention the elephant in the room. Since Sophie and my buddy had no clue what was going on, it actually did go alright in the end. My roomie and Sarah ended up talking and hitting it off. It seemed we'd reached a silent, yet mutual agreement not to mention the glowing mammoth in the room. In the end, the girls actually ended up going back to our flat with us, spending the night. I only told my roomie the reason I had looked so confused after they had left the following day, but yet, that was such a strange date, which somehow worked out. Whoa, you made it to the end? You're a ducking beast. I'll cut you a deal. Smash like and subscribe for more curated content, bruh. It's free and that's a great price.